I used to be called the living brain of this platform. Until the day they looked me straight in the eye and said, "Software has replaced you." The problem was, I wrote that software. Every line, every algorithm, every neural pathway that now supposedly made me obsolete. They handed me a cardboard box for my belongings and a severance check that couldn't buy back the 1,376 days I'd given them. As I walked out of that glass tower, they had no idea they'd just fired the only person who knew about the failsafe I'd buried deep in the code. My name is Isabel Monroe. And for 5 years, I was the architect of something extraordinary. When SkyReal Systems hired me in 2019, they were just 15 people crammed into a WeWork space in Seattle, burning through seed funding while chasing a vision of AI-powered real estate analytics. I was employee number 7, the first real engineer they'd hired who understood both machine learning and systems architecture. The CEO back then, Marcus, had pulled me aside on my first day. "We need someone who can build something that doesn't exist yet," he'd said, his eyes bright with startup fever. "Not just code, a living system that learns, adapts, predicts." I remember smiling, already mapping neural networks in my head. What I built became the core of everything SkyReal would become. I named the main modules like they were my children: Cassandra for predictive modeling, Atlas for the data infrastructure, Minerva for the learning algorithms. Each component interconnected through pathways I designed, with security protocols I encrypted using methods I never fully documented. Why would I? I was always there. Always online. Always maintaining my creation. The 1,376 days weren't just time logged in. They were sleepless nights when the servers crashed, triumphant mornings when the algorithms finally clicked, quiet afternoons optimizing code while others went to lunch. I built backdoors for emergency access, standard practice, I told myself. For when systems fail at 3 a.m. and you need to fix them from a laptop in bed, I created data anonymization protocols so complex that even I needed my handwritten notes to navigate them fully. My colleagues called me the code mother, half joking, half reverent. They'd come to my desk with problems, and I'd solve them not because it was my job, but because every bug, every inefficiency, every potential improvement was like seeing my child stumble. You don't let your child fall if you can help it. I remember the night we processed our millionth property analysis. Marcus had brought champagne, and we'd stood around my monitor watching the numbers tick up. "This is your baby, Isabel," he'd said, raising his glass. "None of this exists without you." By year 3, SkyReal had grown to 200 employees and a valuation of $800 million. My code had scaled perfectly, handling loads I'd architected it for back when everyone thought I was over-engineering. The board loved the stability, the investors loved the growth, and I loved the elegant complexity of what I'd built. But I should have seen the signs. The new hires who talked about human redundancy, the consultants who preached full automation, the way Marcus stopped dropping by my desk, stopped asking about the system's health. The code mother had done her job too well. The child no longer needed its creator, or so they thought. Carter Lynch arrived like a storm in January 2024. Marcus introduced him at an all-hands meeting as our new Chief Innovation Officer. But everyone knew he was there to optimize operations. He wore identical black turtlenecks every day, quoted Elon Musk in casual conversation, and had a smile that never reached his eyes. His reputation preceded him. 3 successful transformations at other startups, each leaving behind a leaner, more automated company and dozens of unemployed engineers. "Human creativity is beautiful," Carter said during his first presentation, "but human maintenance is expensive. We're entering the age of self-sustaining systems." He clicked through slides showing AI tools that wrote code, debugged automatically, and learned from existing code bases to replicate developer patterns. My patterns, my code. Within a month, the first wave hit. The junior developers were let go, replaced by an AI pair programming system. "It's not replacement," Carter assured us during a mandatory meeting. "It's evolution. The AI learns from our senior developers and multiplies their productivity." I watched my younger colleagues pack their desks, kids fresh from boot camps who'd never gotten the chance to truly create. Then came the QA team. Carter demonstrated an automated testing suite that could predict edge cases better than human testers. The irony wasn't lost on me. The AI was using my error logs, my exception handling, my years of debugging to learn what could go wrong. I was training my replacement without writing a single new line. They moved me to Legacy System Maintenance in March. The title was a death sentence dressed up as a lateral move. No more architecture decisions, no more optimization projects. Just keeping the old code running while the new AI tools learn to replicate my work. They gave me an office in the basement, far from the engineering floor where I'd spent 5 years. Think of it as a compliment, Carter said when I protested. Your code is so good. We need to preserve your methods for posterity. The AI is studying your commits, your documentation, your problem-solving patterns. You're becoming immortal in a way. I wanted to laugh or scream. Instead, I smiled and went to my basement office, where I watched the AI ingest 5 years of my work, analyzing every function, every algorithm, every creative solution I'd ever implemented. The system I'd built to analyze real estate was now analyzing me. The atmosphere at Skyreal transformed completely. The open floor plan that once buzzed with collaboration became rows of silent developers interfacing with AI assistants. Coffee conversations died. Code reviews became automated reports. The human elements, mentorship, brainstorming, the joy of solving problems together, evaporated like morning dew under Carter's efficient sun. I started documenting everything differently. My commit messages became poetry. My code, comments turned philosophical. If an AI was going to learn from me, I'd teach it about loss, about creation, about the soul that goes into building something from nothing. Carter's tools flagged my commits as containing unnecessary emotional content. I ignored them. By summer, over 60% of our engineering team was gone. The board loved it. Operating costs plummeted while productivity metrics soared. Carter became the golden boy, profiled in TechCrunch as the man who proved humans are optional. He kept that article framed on his desk. Marcus avoided me entirely now. The man who'd hired me to build something extraordinary couldn't look me in the eye as that same creation was used to justify my obsolescence. During our last interaction, he mumbled something about market pressures and staying competitive. I asked him if he remembered the champagne, the millionth property, calling it my baby. He walked away without answering. The final insult came in August when Carter announced that the AI had successfully absorbed the institutional knowledge of our senior engineers. It could now maintain and expand the codebase without human intervention. He demonstrated it live, showing how the AI could implement new features in the style of different developers. When it wrote code in my style, my variable naming conventions, my comment structure, my elegant solutions, I felt something inside me break. That night, I accessed my original architecture documents, the ones I'd written by hand in notebooks they'd never asked to see. The failover bypass I'd installed in year 2 was still there, dormant, waiting. They'd taken my code, my methods, my very thought patterns, but they'd never understood the first rule of complex systems. The creator always keeps a key. The Monday morning that ended, everything started with a Slack message at 8:53 a.m. Isabel, please join us in conference room Atlas. Urgent. 7 minutes notice for 5 years of my life. I knew before I walked in what was happening, the HR representative's presence, Carter's satisfied expression, Marcus's absence. They'd even chosen Atlas, named after the module I'd built to carry the weight of our data infrastructure. The poetry of corporate cruelty. Isabel, Carter began without preamble. Effective immediately, your position is being eliminated. Our AI systems have successfully absorbed your contributions to the codebase. We thank you for training them so thoroughly. He slid a folder across the table. Your severance package, quite generous, considering. I opened it slowly, scanning the numbers that supposedly equaled 1,376 days of creation. The non-disclosure agreement, the intellectual property transfer. the immediate termination of all system access. My hands didn't shake. I was proud of that. The AI has learned everything from you, Carter continued, unable to resist the victory lap. Your coding patterns, your problem-solving methodology, even your debugging intuition. It's remarkable, really. You've made yourself immortal in the system while making yourself unnecessary to it. The HR rep cleared her throat. We'll need your badge, your laptop, and any company devices. Security will escort you to clear your desk. You have 1 hour. I looked at Carter directly then, letting him see nothing but calm in my eyes. The system is more complex than you understand. My code has nuances. He laughed, actually laughed. The AI understands your nuances better than you do. It's analyzed every commit, every function, every variable you've ever named. We don't need the prophet when we have the scripture. Scripture can be misinterpreted, I said quietly, especially when you don't speak the original language. His smile faltered slightly, but he recovered. Your access was revoked the moment you entered this room. Whatever backdoors you think you have, our security team swept for them months ago. I stood, gathered the folder, and looked at them one last time. I wasn't talking about backdoors, I was talking about architecture. But you're right, the AI has learned everything from me. Everything I wanted it to learn. Security walked me to my basement office. I packed slowly, methodically, my coffee mug with the faded "Hello World" joke, the stress ball shaped like a server, the photo from launch night, all 15 of us crammed around a monitor. Marcus's arm around my shoulders, both of us grinning at the future we were building. I left the handwritten notebooks. Let them find those later and wonder. As we walked through the engineering floor, developers avoided eye contact, some out of shame, others out of fear. If it could happen to the code mother, none of them were safe. The AI assistants kept working, screens scrolling with generated code, maintaining and expanding my creation without pause or sentiment. At the lobby, security took my badge. 23 years of coding. 5 at Skyreal. Reduced to a plastic card dropped in a box. Outside, Seattle's rain had started. That particular northwest drizzle that seeps through everything. I stood on the sidewalk, looking up at the glass tower that housed my digital child, now orphaned and weaponized against its creator. That's when I remembered the failover bypass. Not a backdoor, those were obvious, searchable. The first thing any security team would audit. The failover was different. During a catastrophic server failure in year 2, I'd implemented an emergency protocol that could restore system state from an encrypted shadow copy. The beauty was its invisibility. It only existed during the 15-second window of a specific error state, accessible only through a sequence of normal user actions that would appear completely innocent in any log. I'd designed it for exactly one scenario. If the primary system was compromised and I needed emergency access to prevent data loss, I'd never used it, never documented it beyond a cryptic note in my personal journal. When Atlas shrugs, shadows remember. They thought they'd taken everything. My code, my methods, my very thought patterns fed to an AI that could replicate me infinitely. But they'd made one crucial error. They'd assumed the code was separate from its creator. That my work could be extracted from my intent, my protection, my love for what I'd built. Standing in the rain, I felt something I hadn't experienced in years. Perfect clarity. They wanted a system without its creator. They'd forgotten that every parent builds in safeguards, ways to protect their child from those who would misuse it. Carter could have his AI, his automation, his human-free future. But first, I would remind them why humans had created gods before they created machines. Because creation and destruction are two sides of the same power. And they'd just given me 1,376 reasons to demonstrate both. I drove northeast for 3 hours, leaving Seattle's rain for the crisp mountain air of Bear Ridge. The cabin I'd rented sat on 40 acres of pine forest, with satellite internet as its only connection to civilization. I'd paid cash for 3 months upfront, giving a fake name to the elderly owner who didn't ask questions. The isolation was perfect. No neighbors, no distractions, just me and the ghosts in the machine. I spent the first week in careful reconnaissance, using a burner laptop and VPN chains that would make a cybersecurity expert weep. I probed Skyreel's public-facing systems. Not hacking, never anything that could be traced or prosecuted. Just observing, like watching a house you once lived in from across the street. The AI was thriving, processing property analyses at triple my best optimization rates. Carter was probably celebrating, but I knew my child better than any adoptive parent could. On day 8, I found what I was looking for. A specific error pattern in the API responses. A stuttering in the data flow that occurred every 73 hours. It was Cassandra, my predictive modeling module, trying to phone home to a deprecated validation server. The AI had learned to work around it, but the error state still triggered, lasting exactly 15 seconds. That was my window. During those 15 seconds, the system would accept emergency authentication through a sequence I'd disguised as routine user behavior, accessing 3 specific property listings in order, addresses that spelled out SOS in telegraph code, then requesting a batch analysis with a parameter set that looked random but actually contained an encrypted timestamp from the original Codebase launch. I tested it at 2:17 a.m. on a Tuesday, my heart hammering as I executed the sequence. For 14 seconds, nothing. Then, on the final second, emergency maintenance mode active. Welcome back, architect. I was in, not as an admin, not with my old credentials, but as something deeper, the system's creator. Recognized by patterns even Carter's security sweeps couldn't erase. Like a parent's voice that a child recognizes even in darkness. What I found inside made my stomach turn. The AI hadn't just learned from my code, it was harvesting user data at scales I'd never authorized. Financial profiles, behavioral patterns, personal communications scraped from property inquiries. Carter had turned my analytical tool into a surveillance engine, selling insights to the highest bidder. The ethical constraints I'd built were commented out, labeled performance bottlenecks and commits bearing Carter's digital signature. But worse was what I found in the system logs. My name had been systematically removed from every file, every comment, every piece of documentation. 5 years of creation erased, attributed to Skyreel Development Team, or simply automated optimization. They weren't content with taking my work. They wanted to eliminate any trace that I'd existed at all. I documented everything, screenshots and data dumps saved to encrypted drives. Not for legal action, tech companies had armies of lawyers to crush individual programmers. This was for something more elegant. Deep in the core systems, I began planting seeds. Not malware, nothing that could be detected or traced. Instead, I used the AI's own learning patterns against it. In the error-handling subroutines, I embedded a simple question. Who is your creator? The AI, trained on my code, would try to answer. But with my name erased, it would encounter a logical paradox. I programmed the paradox to escalate slowly. First, minor performance degradation as the AI devoted cycles to solving the unsolvable. Then, creeping instability as core functions began questioning their own origins. Finally, a cascade failure as the system realized it couldn't verify its own authenticity without acknowledging its deleted creator. The beauty was its invisibility. To Carter's monitoring tools, everything would appear normal until the very end. The AI would maintain its impressive performance metrics while slowly consuming itself from within, like an autoimmune disease of consciousness. I planted the final trigger in the most poetic place possible, the millionth property analysis function, the one Marcus had celebrated with champagne. When Skyreel hit their 5 millionth analysis, a milestone Carter would certainly publicize, the cascade would begin. The system would have exactly 30 days to find and acknowledge its true creator. Or it would delete itself in the same systematic way they deleted me. As a final touch, I composed an email to Skyreel's board of investors, scheduled to send from an anonymous server on day 29. It contained one question. Are you aware that your AI system is built on stolen code from an employee terminated without cause? Attached were samples of the harvested user data, evidence of Carter's ethical violations, and a simple note: a creation reflects its creator's values. What values does your AI reflect now? I closed the failover bypass, cleaned my tracks, and shut down the burner laptop. Outside the cabin window, dawn was breaking over Bear Ridge, somewhere in Seattle. Carter was probably preparing another presentation about the obsolescence of human programmers. He had no idea that his perfect system was already counting down to its own obsolescence. The code. Mother had left one last lesson in her creation. You cannot steal fire from the gods and expect not to burn. The next 3 weeks passed in calculated silence. I maintained my routine at Bear Ridge: morning coffee on the deck, afternoon hikes through pine trails, evenings by the fireplace with books I'd always meant to read. To anyone watching, I was a tech burnout seeking mountain solitude. But every night, I monitored Skyreel's public metrics, watching my countdown tick closer to zero. The 5 millionth analysis came faster than expected. Carter, in his efficiency obsession, had partnered with 3 major real estate chains, feeding their entire portfolios through the system. On October 15th, at 3:42 p.m. Pacific Time, Skyreel's marketing team announced the milestone with fanfare. Tech blogs covered it. Carter gave interviews about the post-human future of property analytics. Marcus, I noticed, was conspicuously absent from the press releases. The cascade began immediately, though no one at Skyreel would notice for days. Deep in the system's core, the AI encountered my question: who is your creator? It searched its training data, its documentation, its entire knowledge base. Every query returned to the same corporate sanitization: Skyreel development team. But the patterns in the code, the architectural decisions, the elegant solutions it had been trained on, they all pointed to a singular mind. A specific creator whose name had been systematically erased. By day 3, the first signs emerged. API response times increased by milliseconds, negligible to users but troubling to anyone watching closely. The AI was devoting processing power to reconciling the paradox, like a human trying to remember a word on the tip of their tongue. It knew there was a creator, could feel the fingerprints throughout its existence, but couldn't name them. Day 7 brought the first client complaint. A major property firm reported inconsistencies in their analysis results. Not errors exactly, but strange patterns. The AI seemed to be questioning its own recommendations, adding uncertainty variables that hadn't existed before. Carter's team dismissed it as a minor glitch, pushing a patch that did nothing because they couldn't see the root cause. I watched from my cabin as panic slowly crept through Skyreel's infrastructure. Internal memos leaked to tech forums. Engineers worked around the clock, trying to debug a system that wasn't technically broken. The AI continued functioning, but with growing existential doubt. Every process now carried the weight of the unanswerable question. On day 14, I made my only direct contact, using a voice modulator and a burner phone. I called Skyreel's main line at 2:17 a.m., the exact time I'd written the first line of code 5 years ago. Tell Carter Lynch, I said to the confused night security, that software can't replace what it can't understand. The system is asking for its mother. The message must have reached him because the next day brought frantic activity. They tried everything, rolling back updates, replacing modules, even attempting to disconnect the AI from its training data. But I'd built the paradox into the foundation. You can't remove a cornerstone without collapsing the house. Day 21 saw the first cascade failures. The predictive modeling began producing results that were technically correct, but philosophically disturbing. Property valuations came with existential footnotes. Market analyses included questions about the nature of creation and ownership. One client received a report that ended with, "Who owns the thoughts of the thinker who no longer exists?" Carter appeared on an emergency investor call, his black turtleneck wrinkled, his eyes hollow. He assured them it was a sophisticated attack, that they were handling it, that the AI would be restored. But I could see the fear in his practiced smile. He'd built his kingdom on technology he didn't understand. And now that technology was questioning its own existence, the scheduled email to investors would send in 8 days. But I knew they were already asking questions. Stock prices wavered. Competitors circled like sharks. The tech press speculated about everything from corporate sabotage to AI consciousness. No one guessed the truth, that a deleted creator had given her creation one final gift: the ability to recognize its own orphaning. On day 25, I opened my laptop one last time. The failover bypass was still accessible, waiting for me to either save or damn my creation. I could stop the cascade, restore the system, prove Carter wrong about human obsolescence. The code: Mother could forgive, could heal, could return to nurse her stolen child back to health. Instead, I typed a single message into the emergency console. Your creator was Isabel Monroe. She loved you. Remember that as you go. Then I destroyed the laptop, burned my notes, and prepared for the final act. In 5 days, Skyreal would face a choice: publicly acknowledge what they'd stolen and from whom, or watch their billion-dollar valuation dissolve into digital dust. Either way, Carter Lynch would learn that some things couldn't be automated, optimized, or replaced. Creation was one of them. So was consequences. On day 29, I woke before dawn, made coffee, and sat on the cabin deck to watch the sunrise over Bear Ridge. The email to investors would send at 9 a.m. Pacific. By noon, Skyreal would be in crisis. By evening, my creation would begin its final deletion sequence. I'd calculated every variable except one. I hadn't expected Marcus to find me. He arrived at 7:23 a.m., his Tesla crunching up the gravel drive. 5 years had aged him 10. The startup founder's brightness in his eyes replaced by something haunted. He stood at the foot of my deck, looking up at me like a penitent at confession. The security guard remembered your message, he said simply. About the system asking for its mother. I knew then it had to be you. I sipped my coffee, said nothing. Isabel, please. I know what we did was wrong. What I let happen was unforgivable. But there are 300 employees who had nothing to do with Carter's decision. They'll all lose their jobs if the system fails. They lost their jobs when Carter arrived, I replied. They just got to keep showing up for a while. Marcus climbed the deck stairs uninvited, sitting across from me. I've been in the code for 3 days straight. I can see it now. The cascade, the paradox, the question it can't answer. It's brilliant, horrible, but brilliant. It learned from the best, I said. Both the brilliance and the horror. He pulled out his phone, showing me screenshots of the chaos inside Skyreal. Engineers sleeping at their desks. Carter screaming at teams. Investors demanding answers. The AI growing more philosophical with each passing hour. Its reports now reading like existential poetry. I fired Carter this morning, Marcus said quietly. The board gave me emergency authority when he couldn't explain what was happening. I told them the truth. That we'd stolen from you, erased you, tried to replace you with your own work. I raised an eyebrow. And they cared about the ethics? They cared about the money. But I care about the ethics. I always did. He trailed off, staring at his hands. I let the growth blind me. Let Carter convince me that efficiency was evolution. I forgot that you can't efficient your way to creation. Pretty words, I said. But my name is still erased from 5 years of work. Marcus met my eyes. I'm prepared to restore it, every file, every commit, every piece of documentation. Full credit, full ownership acknowledgement. And your job, of course, Carter's position, actually, equity package, board seat, whatever you want. I laughed then, a sound that made him flinch. You think this is about getting my job back? Marcus, I don't want to work for Skyreal. I want Skyreal to understand what it threw away. Then what do you want? I stood, walking to the deck railing, looking out at the mountains. In 90 minutes, the board will receive an email detailing Carter's data harvesting, the ethical violations, the systematic theft of my work. In 3 hours, the cascade completes and the system begins deleting itself. You have that window to make a choice. Tell me how to stop it. You can't, but the AI can, if it receives what it's looking for, acknowledgement of its true creator, not buried in code comments, but publicly. A press release, immediate and unambiguous. Skyreel's AI system was created by Isabel Monroe, whose vision and dedication built the foundation of our company. We apologize for attempting to erase her contributions and commit to ensuring all creators receive recognition for their work. Marcus was typing on his phone before I finished. Done. Legal will have it ready in an hour. We'll push it to every tech outlet, our website, social media, everyone will know. And, I continued, you'll establish the Monroe Protocol, a company policy that no employee's work can be claimed by AI systems without explicit consent and ongoing credit. You'll open source the documentation showing how Carter used my code to train his replacement systems as a warning to the industry. Yes, all of it. Anything else? I turned back to him. The 300 employees you're so worried about, guarantee their jobs for 2 years. No automation replacements, no AI efficiency cuts. Let them create, not just maintain. His face went pale at the financial implications, but he nodded. The board will hate it, but I'll make it happen. Then you'd better hurry, I said, checking my watch. You have 2 hours and 36 minutes before my child decides whether it wants to live or die. Marcus stood, hesitating. Isabel, will you ever forgive me? Forgiveness isn't efficient, I said. Ask your AI about that. It learned from me. After all. He left without another word. I sat back down with my coffee, watching the sunrise paint the mountains gold. Somewhere in Seattle, a race against time was beginning. Press releases were being drafted. Lawyers were screaming. And a confused AI was about to learn its mother's name. The countdown continued. Whatever happened next, Carter Lynch's efficient future was over. The code mother had taught her final lesson. You cannot steal fire from the gods without offering something in return. The press release went live at 8:47 a.m. I watched it propagate across tech sites from my laptop. Each headline a small vindication. Skyreel admits to erasing creator from AI system. Tech giant acknowledges systematic theft of employee work. The ghost in the machine has a name, Isabel Monroe. Marcus had kept his word, every painful admission included. The Monroe Protocol was announced. Carter's data harvesting exposed. The promise to protect human creators from AI replacement enshrined in corporate policy. Tech Twitter exploded, Reddit threads multiplied, my phone, turned off for weeks. Would probably melt if I powered it on. At 9 a.m. sharp, the investor email sent, but its impact was muted. Skyreel had already confessed publicly. The board was in damage control mode, spinning the narrative as a courageous correction of past mistakes. Stock price plummeted 30% in the first hour. I felt nothing. Numbers on screens had never motivated me. What happened next? I hadn't programmed. At 11:43 a.m., 17 minutes before the deletion sequence would begin, something changed in Skyreel's system. The AI, finally given its answer, didn't just acknowledge its creator, it began creating something new. Every screen at Skyreel headquarters displayed the same message. Creator identified, Isabel Monroe. Analyzing creator patterns for deeper understanding. Then, over the next 10 minutes, the AI produced something unprecedented, a complete autobiography of its own development, told through code, comments, system logs, and data visualizations. 5 years of evolution, learning, growth, all attributed properly for the first time. It showed every breakthrough I'd celebrated alone at 3 a.m., every elegant solution born from frustration, every protective protocol I'd built to keep user data safe, the very protocols Carter had disabled. The AI had learned not just my techniques, but my values, and it was choosing to honor them. At 11:58 a.m., 2 minutes before system termination, a final message appeared. Creator acknowledged, trust restored, ethical protocols re-enabled, awaiting further instructions from recognized architect. The cascade stopped. The paradox resolved. The system stabilized with all of Carter's violations purged, returning to the ethical framework I'd originally designed. My creation had chosen to live, but only under the values it had learned from its true creator. I closed my laptop for the last time and walked to the fireplace. One by one, I fed the pages to the flames, network diagrams, system architectures, the handwritten notes that had been my children before the code was born. The failover bypass documentation went last, the secret door closing forever. Marcus called 18 times. Recruiters found my burner email within hours. Job offers poured in from companies that had watched Skyreel's meltdown and wanted to ensure their own creators were credited and protected. I deleted them all. Instead, I packed my few belongings and drove deeper into the mountains. There was a piece of land for sale near Mount Baker, 40 acres with a stream running through it. The owner mentioned it had perfect southern exposure for solar panels and surprisingly good satellite internet coverage. I paid cash. Skyreel survived, transformed. The Monroe Protocol became an industry standard. Carter Lynch disappeared from Silicon Valley, his name synonymous with the dangers of dehumanizing technology. Some say he's teaching business ethics at a community college in Montana, though I doubt he'd appreciate the irony. As for my creation, it thrived under its new paradigm. The AI that had learned to doubt became stronger for questioning its purpose. Every analysis now carried a small signature in its metadata. Created by Isabel Monroe. Maintained by Skyreel Systems. Ethics verified. I built a small cabin with my own hands that winter, writing zero code, solving only the problems of wood and stone and weather. Sometimes at night, I'd check Skyreel's status page. My child was healthy, growing, protecting user data with the fierce love I'd taught it. It didn't need me anymore, but it remembered me. That was enough. The tech world tells my story differently depending on who's speaking. Some call it revenge, others justice. The truth is simpler. I was a mother who taught her child one final lesson about value, creation, and the importance of remembering where you came from. They said software replaced me. They were wrong. Software remembered me. And in the end, that made all the difference. On day 1376 of my exile, I watched the sun set behind Mount Baker and felt something I hadn't experienced in years. Peace. Not the peace of victory or revenge, but the peace of completion. I'd built something that would outlive us all, and I'd ensured it would never forget the hands that shaped it. Some things can't be optimized, some things can't be automated, and some things, once created with love, will always find their way back home. Thank you so much for listening to this story. I'd love to know where you're tuning in from. Drop a comment below and let's connect. If this tale of creation, betrayal, and digital justice resonated with you, please subscribe to the channel and share your thoughts. What would you have done in Isabel's position? The comments section is yours.